Okay, let's get started. We're up to the Gemara at the bottom of Ayin Tes on the base. We're up to the Gemara of Gufa. So yesterday, what we were discussing is the three opinions. If it was exactly 50-50, 50% of Klal Yisrael was Tameh and 50% of Klal Yisrael was Tahar, what would they do? So if we remember, Rav said that the way you deal with it is that everybody brings their carbon for Pesach Rishon, because we say that Mechza al Mechza is Kiroi. And Rav Kahana, in his first Lashon, said that in both Lashonis he holds Mechza al Mechza is not Kiroi. So in the first Lashon he said that the Tamein will bring their carbon by Pesach Sheni. And in the second Nusach he said that the Tamein don't bring their carbon at all because they can't bring it by Pesach Rishon and they can't bring it by Pesach Sheni. And the Gemara brought brises to support everybody, and then the Gemara went through how each one deals with the other, with the brises that supports the other, how they understand. So now the Gemara goes back to Gufa. And we're going to go back and analyze the brisa that the Gemara brought to support Rav's position. Haresha Yisrael, Mechta Torah and Mechta Tamein. If Klal Yisrael is 50-50, Halalu Oisin La'atzman, Halalu Oisin La'atzman. Rav learned that everyone brings carbon Pesach. The only difference is that they segregate. If it was Roiv, Klal Yisrael, or Tamein, then everybody does it together with the higher. I'm sorry, or Betuma. However, if half is Torah and half is Tamei, then they have that Torah goes separate, so they can keep everything that they're doing Torah, and the people who are Tamei do their carbon separately. Hoyu Tameim Oitin ala Tahim, but if there are more Tamein than Torah, so Tameim is Roiv, Afilu Echad, even if there is one extra, so there's literally you can have a million on one side and a million and one on the other side, you still say that Yasu B'tuma, V'she'ein carbon tzibur chalak. You don't split up the carbon tzibur. And we're going to soon see in Rashi a svara that if everyone does it B'tuma, okay, nish keferlach. But if you see some people are doing it B'tuma and some people doing it B'tahaya, then the people that are doing it B'tuma stick out as a gnai. And therefore, you have to keep it uniform. Rabbi Elazar ben Masha Aimer, Rabbi Elazar ben Masha says, Ein hayachid machriya es hatzibur l'tumah. Just having one person extra, that doesn't do the trick. Shenemar, the pasuk says, Lo yisucho lizboyach es hapesach ba'achat sharecha. And we learn that you shouldn't make the Pesach b'shvil yochid, Rashi, b'shvil yochid lo yisiz b'cheder. Don't shecht it because of a yochid. In other words, don't let just one person be the overruler. So someone's asking that according to Rav, who holds that the Tamein bring it, do they eat it as well? So I believe we learned that the carbon Pesach, in order for it to be a good carbon, you have to eat it. So therefore, those who bring it B'tumah will have to eat it as well. But even if they're makarit B'tumah, and they in fact can eat it B'tumah. Because like the Mishnah says, the carbon Pesach has to be eaten. Now, we just learned Rabbi Elazar ben Masha holds that one person alone will not be able to do machriya. I didn't see anywhere where it says how many people you need as the roiv to be machriya. If anybody, Mechi Sirgens, I always put pressure on Mechi, because you see the Art Scroll says, I didn't see anywhere in the Gemara, I looked up the Rishonim, no one says how much of a roiv do you need to be machriya. All we know is that Rabbi Elazar ben Masha holds that one is not machriya. Maybe it means two is machriya, because it says it's only one person that can't be machriya, but two people would be machriya. That's how I understand it. But if I'm making a mistake, please correct me. I'm just going to wait for Mechi because it's not fair to make Mechi take a detour and everybody else rushes on.
There's a note here, but I'm trying to see if it talks about that. Hold on. It just says he darshans the word ba'achad, and
it only means if it's one person.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay,
it sounds like if there's two is already there. That's
then
already.
you would be machria. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I just wanted to be sure. Reb Shimon Omer, Reb Shimon says, "Afilu shevet echad tamei." If even one shevet is tamei, the shar kol ashvatim tahirim, but all the rest of the shvatim are tahir. Halalu oisin la'atzmon, v'halalu oisin la'atzmon. Each one does it separately. So the shevet that's tahar will do it with tahira. The shevet that's tamei does it with tumah. My time with Reb Shimon. What is for Reb Shimon? If one shevet's only 500,000 people or 100,000 people, and the rest of Klal Yisrael altogether might be 1,000,000 people, so they might be outnumbered 10-1. How could they bring it to Tumah? There are miyat shabamiyat. So the Gemara kasavar shevet achad ikri kahal, because Reb Shimon holds that one shevet is a kahal, so it's one kahal against another kahal. That's 50-50. Let's see Rashi. Rashi says very interesting, because Yaakov, it was told to Yaakov, the Rebbeinu told Yaakov, Goy ukahal goyim yemi mecha. Out of you will come a goy and the kahal goyim. The problem is at the time when Yaakov was promised that from the Rebbeinu Shalom, at the time when Hashem said you're going to have a goy ukahal goyim, at that point he already had all his children except for Binyamin. So it must be that one shevet alone, Binyamin, hilchach shevet echad, choshev ketzibur v'lemitchel Hashem. Even if only one shevet is tamei, but all the rest of the shvatim are tahor, yasu b'tumah. Rashi says after tahirim. Even the tahirim can do it b'tumah. You know why? She'ain carbon tzibur chaluk. He takes that svara to a higher level, and he says it's not nice. It's a gnai. It's a gnai for the carbon. If so many people are bringing B'tahira and these people are bringing B'tumah, it highlights them bringing it B'tumah. It's better that everyone should bring it B'tumah and it should be uniform. At that time? Right. I hear. Okay, very good. Because if Binyamin wasn't born, surely Menashe and Ephraim wasn't born. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Shevet Echad Ikri Kahal. Rabbi Yehuda holds that a Shevet Echad is considered a Kahal. V'havalu palgu palga, and it'll be 50-50. You have one kahal that's tahar, one kahal that's tamei. Let's not count the members of each kahal. You count kahals, you count kilas. Vein carbon tzibur chaluk, and it's not bakovidik to separate the carbon tzibur. I just want to learn that Rashi inside. It was a Mosef Rashi it was a Likutei Rashi that explains it very nicely. I'm going to go back to the Amud Beis. I have this extra little Rashi here. She'ein carbon tzibur haba b'tumah chaluk me'acher she'carbon ruben ba b'tumah. Since most people are bringing it b'tumah, af ha'yochid oisa b'tumah. Therefore, even the yochid does a b'tumah. Mechi avid kahal b'tumah b'rishon le'mavuk le'meba tahirim b'tahira. Since the kahal is doing a b'tumah, you won't separate anybody to do b'tahira. The aser lichalek, and here's the important reason: she'gnai hadavar. It looks not nice. The mucha milsa v'hedya kishin isharin elu me'elu. When you see one group is bedavka avoiding another group, that's a gnai because clearly it's showing that there's a deficiency in one of the karbonis. Itmar. So we had a shaila. Hayu Yisrael mechza tahirin u'mechza tmei. What if Klal Yisrael was 50-50? That's a similar shaila. We had that before. Amar Rav. So before Rav said that they both bring in separate groups. Here Rav says something else. Here he said, "Metamin echad mehen b'sheretz." Just make one more person tamei b'sheretz, and then you have roiv tamei, and if you have roiv tamei, then everyone can bring the carbon b'tumah. Why is that the method? We know Rav holds ne'avdu chahana lechudayu, chahana lechudayu. The Amar Rav halalu oisan la'atzmam. So why is it that Rav over here said they should be metama, one of them, and then they're done kulay b'tumah? So tomorrow Amri hachabamay skinan going to tameim oitin al hatorim echad. There was one extra person. By the tameim. So therefore, we don't want to. We can't go 50-50. We can't split them up. fact, the more ihachi have a laruba tameim. So then it's ruba tameim, and therefore the avda kula b'tumah. The Gemara Savar like Rabbi Elazar ben Masya, Rav is going to agree like Rabbi Elazar ben Masya. The Amar ein hayachid machria es atzibur l'tumah. One is not enough. Is not enough. Is my right? What? Oh, very good, very good. So saying from here you have exactly that raya. Okay, Zaktimar ihachi hadar kushon lucht luchte. So then we're right back where we started with Rashi. The havalu palgo palga. If one is not machria, so one makes it like palgo palga. Valolo yasal atzma, valolo yasal atzma. And therefore, nahava chani l'chadayu, vani l'chadayu. Ela hachi k'amar. This is what Rav means to say. Ikitana, the sover lo kitana kama, damar palgu palga, lo avdi kula batuma. If there's somebody who happens to hold like the Tanakama of the Brisa that we just quoted, that says alalu oisin la'atzman, alalu oisin la'atzman, and if that Tana also happens to hold the sover lo Rav Yehuda, and if he also happens to hold like Rav Yehuda, damar ein carbon tzibur chaluk, that you can't split it, and therefore everybody would have to do it b'tumah. So the best way to deal with it is mitamin echad mehen b'sheretz. You be mitamin one person b'sheretz, and then they could all bring it b'tumah. Let's see Rashi. It's not. We're backing off from the kimta that we wanted to say that there was one extra person that was tummy. If you hold, if there's a Tana who holds that by 50 or 50, the Taharin cannot do it b'tumah, the Amr ain't carbon tzibur chaluk. So therefore, and the reason why it's not chaluk is like we said before in the Moshe Rashi, now Rashi is here. Since there's a group of people who by the Pesach Rishon are allowed to bring it b'tumah, it's not appropriate that there should also be a group separately, segregated, who brings it b'tahira. The also l'chalik, you can't split up Klal Yisrael like that. Shekinaya dover. The Milcha Milsa, then it really sticks out. The Milcha Milsa behedya kishin yisarin elu me'elu. So then what do? Matam nechad b'sheretz, and they have the kula b'tumah, and then everybody could bring it b'tumah. So that's what Rabbi was saying. If you have a Tana who happens to hold a combination of these two shitas, that mechza and mechza, you should really separate them. But he's sensitive to doing that, so then just be mitama one more person, and then everyone does a mitama. So the only person who's getting left out of this equation is Rabbi Elazar ben Masya, because here for one person we are being machriyat to ripe to me.
So hold on, are we changing Rav's opinion that mechza then doesn't go?
So it seems like from the Gemara that Rav already said his opinion that mechza they do segregate. But if you happen to, let's say you disagree with me, and let's say you hold that you can't segregate because it's not pakavadik, so the answer for you would be to just make one more person talk.
Okay, got it. But he himself,
separate. Yeah, I'm not worried about that problem. Anyway, there's Chassidim, there's Litvish, there's Orthodox, there's ultra-Orthodox, there's Haredi, not Haredi. No, so there's Tomei and not Tomei. I can live with it. But if you have that problem, no problem. You can fix that too.
Got it.
Zok to Gemara. The Ula Omar. And Ula says, I have a simple answer. Mishalchen echad mehena derech rechaika. Why bother making someone Tomei? Just tell him to go, tell the kohen to go out of the bismedrish. Tell him we need extra aliyahs today. Send him away. So Rashi learns that the person that you send away, no, it's not Rashi. It's Tosfos behind it. Tosfos wants to know who do you send away. So Tosfos says that you're going to send. Tosfos says a pirish echad min that taharin. You send away one of the taharim. So Tosfos doesn't like it, but that's l'maisa how we learn that you send away one of the taharim. If you send away one of the taharim, now you have a roiv of tamein. If you have a roiv of tamein, you could bring the whole thing to tumah. Frank the Gemara, why would Ula do that? Yitamenu b'sheretz. Why don't you just make him tummy with a sheretz? Zok the Gemara, kasover Ula holds shoichtin v'zoikin off to make sheretz. Let's think about this. If someone becomes tummy with a sheretz, he could toivel, and tonight he's tar. He can eat the carbon pesach. So we learned the machlokes is if a person is tummy of tummy sheretz, even though tonight he'll be able to eat it, but right now during the processing of the carbon pesach, he's tummy b'sheretz. are you allowed to shech and bizark? Are you allowed to process a carbon on his behalf? So Ula holds you would be able to. So therefore, if you're with Tam B'Sheretz, it wouldn't change anything. It's still going to be 50-50. Okay, so then v'tamenu b'meis. So why aren't you mitam him with a mace? Then he won't even be able to eat tonight because a mace is tamei for 7 days. A tamei mace is tamei for 7 days till he has all this rikas. So tomorrow, because then you're ruining him even more. Not only are you making him be mevatel the carbon pesach, but matcheu ata mechagigasa. He will not be able to bring his chagiga because tomorrow on the 15th day of the chodesh, everybody has to bring a chagiga. And if you make him tamei, he won't be able to do that. So tomorrow, hashtanami matcheu ata mipischai. Well, by making him tamei sheretz, you're making him miss his carbon pesach. So tomorrow, Evsher, let's see what the Bach says. Evsher, the Ovid is sheni. He could bring it by Pesach sheni. Take tomorrow, the Mes Nami, Evsher, the Ovid B'Shvi. He could bring his chagiga on the 7th day of the Yom Tov. The Havelay Shmini Shaloi, because we know that if you don't bring the chagiga on the first day, you have to Hashlum and Kol Shiva. If he became tamei Arab Yom Tov, then day 7 for him is the second last day of Yom Tov. And the last day of Yom Tov is day 8 where he'd be tahar already. And at that point, you could still bring the chagiga. So by making him a tamei mace, you're not hurting him. Because for the carbon pesach, you're bringing Pesach sheni. And the chagiga you could bring on the last day.
Yosy, how could he bring a sheni if he's not tamei? The whole thing is only if you're somewhere tamei.
Yeah, you made him tamei, the shirts. You made him tamei.
Okay, got it, okay.
Ula holds kulu tashlumen the rishon. Ula holds that you can't. It's not like a tchila that you bring. You could bring the chagiga any day of Yom Tov that you want. Rather, the chiyuv is to bring the chagiga on the first day of Yom Tov. If you couldn't bring it al tashlumen, then you could bring it on another day. But that's only the chazi b'rishon, chazi b'chulu. If someone is not tamei and is able to bring the carbon chagiga on the first day, but if for some reason he's not able, he doesn't have time, then he could make a tashlumen kol shiva. But if he was tamei on the first day of Yom Tov, he already lost his chiyuv to bring the carbon chagiga and he loses it completely. So it's for that reason why Ula said, I can't make him tamei b'sheretz because that won't work. I can't make him tamei mace because I'm hurting him unduly. I'm making him miss the chagiga. Amul Rav Nachman said, let me ask you a question. If I tell you Erev Yom Tov, Mechi Erev Yom Tov, I want you to go to Barbados for Yom Tov. You're not going to go. So Rav Nachman told Ula, Zilu v'amrulei le'Ula, go tell Ula, man sayis, who in the world is going to listen to you if you tell him the Aker Sichei Umashchnei V'roit? He'll pick himself up on their Pesach and move out in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't have anything. He's not going to do it. It's difficult enough to get a guy to say brachas Shavuos morning, right? Who wants to do that? You're going to get a guy Erev Pesach to move? He's not the guy. It's not going to happen. So it's more logical just to be Matama him b'sheretz.
Yosy, according to Ula, this guy will never bring a carbon pesach. Is that the shot here?
According to Ula, well, no, forget it. According to Ula, if you're Matama and b'sheretz,
Ula says
according to Ula, if you send him away, b'derech ha'chayka, you could bring Pesach Sheni.
How? He's not tamei.
I know, but Pesach Sheni is for those who are tamei and for those who are b'derech ha'chayka.
Oh, okay.
That's on the list. The two items that are on the list are those two.
Yosy offered them Pesach Sheni in Italy. Pesach hotel in Italy. You'll go.
I always had a shita that all of us wannabes who are losers and can't afford $10,000 per person for Pesach away, the Shabbos after Pesach, they should have a special Shabbos where they serve all the leftovers for those losers like us who can't afford to go away for Pesach, but they can offer a discounted rate for the Shabbos after Pesach where we can eat at least the leftovers. Okay. Itmar. Well, this is a very interesting case. What about you, Reuben Zovin? Now, what's unique about a Zov? A Zov cannot bring a Pesach Rishon, even if Roiv Tzibur is Tamei. A Zov, someone who was a Tumah, Yosy Megufoi, he's not even allowed to bring a carbon when it's Tumah Hotra B'Tzibur. So what if a Roiv of the people were Zovin? Umi Uton Tamei Mason, and a minimum, and a meat was Tamei Mason. So let's just, for argument's sake, say there's 1 million Yidden, and 500,000 plus one, a little bit more than 500,000 people were Zovin, and maybe 200,000 people were Tamei Mason. And then you still have another 299,000 people that are tahar. So let's think how you deal with this. Omarav, oisin tamei mason. These tamei mason are out of luck because ein and oisin loy berishon. They can't bring the carbon pesach, the tuma by pesach rishon, the loy b'sheni, and they won't be able to bring it by pesach sheni either. And the Gemara makes the cheshbon why. For rishon loy avdi, they can't bring the pesach rishon. They have a meuta. They're a miyut. There's a miyut of people who have a tuma that will allow you to bring the carbon pesach. And if a miyut has such a tuma, they're nitchel pesach sheni. Umiuta le'avdi b'rishon. A miyut cannot bring the pesach rishon. B'sheni nami le'avdu, but they can't bring pesach sheni either. Why? Because kol heicha of the tziba b'rishon, if the masses bring a carbon b'tahira by pesach rishon, then Ovid Yochid b'Sheni. Then those individuals who weren't able to join the tzibur, they'll bring the carbon by Pesach Sheni. But of the tzibur b'Rishon. But if it's a case where the tzibur did not bring the Pesach Rishon, like in this case, because the Tamei Mesim were the miyut, Lo Ovid Yochid b'Sheni. The Yochid will not bring a Pesach Sheni. So these people, these Tamei Mesim, in fact, will not be able to bring the carbon at all. Amr Shmuel. Shmuel sent a message and he said, Amr Lei. Amr Shmuel Zilu Amr Le Abba. Go tell Abba. And Abba was a term of respect with which Shmuel addressed Rav. Tell him, so you're telling me no carbon Pesach this year, it's all canceled. Did you forget the pasuk Vayasu b'nei Yisrael? It's a Pesach b'mayadoi. My obviously. What are you going to do with that technical difficulty that the Rabban Shem said that you must bring the Pesach every year? Amr Lahu, so Rav sent back, Zilu Amr Lei, you could respond back to Shmuel, ki have a kula zavin, my obviously. What would you have done if all of Klal Yisrael were zavin? There wouldn't be any Pesach at all. And you should have on yourself the same kasha. What about the pasuk v'yasu b'nei Yisrael? It's a pesach b'mayadoi. Ella, what you have to say is kivin lo yefsher lo yefsher. You're going to have to say that if they're all zoven, it's just a situation that's an impossible situation, and unfortunately, we will not be able to even kind the mitzvah of carbon pesach that year. So Hakanami in this case also, which was Ruben's oven and Miyutam Tamei Mesim lo yefsher. It's just an exception.
I still don't understand why the Pesach Sheni doesn't work here.
Because you only bring a Pesach Sheni when the tzibur brought a Pesach Rishon. But if no one brought a Pesach Rishon, then you don't bring a Pesach Sheni either.
Because nobody's bringing at all, you mean?
That's right, because nobody ended up bringing.
Uh-huh.
We never have, in all of the rest of Torah literature, we never have a pasuk that, we never have a mitzvah that was suspended because of technicalities, even though we have a pasuk that Shmuel thinks it's such a kasha.
Of course we do. Of course, with every single carbon, it says you have to bring a carbon tablet every day, and we've suspended it for thousands of years already. We don't have a base mikdash.
Yeah, so hold on a second. So Shmuel lived after the base mikdash. So why was Shmuel so nervous about this pasuk?
Because it says b'moyada. So he says maybe you have to manipulate things to find some way. Zakra Itmar. What about how you rubon Tamei Mason? Roiver Tamei Mason, Umiutan Zavin, and only a minority of Klal Yisrael were Zavin. So Rav Huna Amar, Rav Huna says, Ein tashlumin lepesach hababatuma. Since this carbon Pesach was babatuma, because it was Reuben Tamei Mason, so it was brought batuma. Even though it was brought batuma, we know the Zavin were not able to participate because a Zav is not included in Tumah Hutra B'Tzibah. But since the Carbon Pesach was brought B'Tumah, the Zavin, even if they're tar, when Pesach Sheni comes, they cannot make the Tashlum. And Rashi says, Ain't Tashlum on Pesach Abba B'Tumah, the Ein Zavin Oisim Sheni Afilu Tiharu. Even if the Zavin are now tar, they will not bring the Pesach Sheni. There is no Pesach Sheni when everybody brought the carbon, the Tumah by Pesach Rishon. Rav Ada Bar Ava Amar, Yesh Tashlumin LePesach Haba B'Tumah. There is no Tashlumin. What is the explanation? Name of the Gemara wants to suggest that maybe this would be the machlokes. The man Amar Ein Tashlumin LePesach Haba B'Tumah. The mandamar who holds there's no tashlumin for a Pesach that's babatuma is because kasavar tuma the chuya hibitzibur. So everybody agrees that there's no tashlumin for a carbon Pesach hababatuma. So if you hold tumah chuya hibitzibur, then you're saying there's really a tumah here. There's really a tumah here, but we're letting people do it. So if there's really a tumah here, then we say ain't tashlumin the Pesach hababatuma. So Dr. Rashi, since it's tumah dechuya, it's uvakushi huter lakriva. There's a tumah hovering over our heads over here, and it was with difficulty, with hesitance, that we were allowed to bring it to tumah, but we still considered it a tumah. We don't consider it like the people who brought it were tar, which would then create an opportunity for those who were tamei to bring it by Pesach Sheni. And if you hold yesh tashlumin lePesach haba b'tumah, that kasav b'tumah hutra b'tzibur, and that means umashvin lakitayrin. So these people who are being makriv, the carbon b'tumah, we look at them like they're tahar because we say tumah hutra b'tzibur. There is no pagamir. This is a class A carbon without even any compromises. So therefore, if you consider this mamish like the hiring, because tumah hutra b'tzibur, then v'dachu zavan l'sheni, and then it would trigger a chiyuv to bring the carbon Pesach Sheni. Zok Gemara, no, that's not the machlokes. The chula alma the tumah the chuyo hibitzibur. It's possible to argue that everybody holds that it's tumah the chuyo hibitzibur. So the svara of why they don't bring the Pesach Sheni is obvious because ain't tashlumin lePesach haba b'tumah. What is the svara of the mandamar holds that the zavan may bring the carbon Pesach by Pesach Sheni? Well, this would be the machlokes. Mar Sover, one person holds that tahira matchi tumah matchi. One mandamar holds that tahira is matcha tumah l'sheni. If they are tahirin who brought the carbon, then they'll be doich the tmein to Pesach Sheni. So ki adu tzibur b'tahira. Only when the tzibur makes the carbon b'tahira, then it pushes off the tmeim of Pesach Sheni. But tumah lematchi. But if it's brought b'tumah, it will not be doiche anybody to Pesach Sheni. Umar savar afilu tumah nami matchi. The other mandamar holds that you don't say that a Pesach haba b'tumah, there's no tashlumin for it. Fakir. He argues on the whole side. A Pesach that's ba b'tumah could still be doiche those who cannot bring it, such as the zavin, to Pesach Sheni. Itmar zak gemara. Hayu shlishishan zavin. What if there was a third of zavin? Ushlishishan tahirin, and the third were tahirin. Ushlishishan tamei mason. So it's now split in three ways. So let's see how we process this. Amar Reb Mani bar Patish. Oitin tamei mason. The group that are tamei mason, again they're stuck. Einen oitin lo yesa rishon v'lo yesa sheni. They cannot bring the carbon Pesach at all. For rishon lo yavdi, the reason why they can't bring it by the rishon is because dilu zavin ala tahirin. If you combine the zavin with the tahirin, then you have a roiv of people, the loy of the betuma, that are not going to bring the carbon betuma. So roiv of Klal Yisrael are not going to bring the carbon betuma. So if that's the case, have a like Tmei Mesa miuta. On Erev Pesach Rishon, the Tmei Mesa are in the minority. Umiuta loy of the Rishon. And if there's only a minority of Klal Yisrael who are Tamei that want to bring the carbon, they can't bring it on Pesach Rishon. B'sheni loyavdi, they can't bring the carbon Pesach by Pesach Sheni because then nitzer fu zaven in Tmei Mesim. Then you'll combine the zaven with the Tmei Mesim to make a roiv. Roiv, the loyavdi b'rishon, that can't do it by the rishon, and therefore that didn't do it by the rishon. Right now that we're standing by Pesach Sheni, we have roiv people here who didn't bring the carbon by Pesach Rishon. Havalaruba, v'ruba le'matcha lePesach Sheni. If roiv people didn't bring it, you cannot push it off to Pesach Sheni. Let's see Rashi. V'rishon lo'avdi the Tmei Mesa miyuta. If the Tmei Mesa are miyuta, therefore they can't bring the carbon Pesach Rishon. V'sheni lo'avdi, and they can't bring it by the Pesach Sheni. The oil the taru zavan achshav. Now, Erev Pesach Sheni, the Zavin are Tahar, which means nimtzu roiv tzibur tzrichanai, which means now roiv of the tzibur needs Pesach Sheni. V'ruba the tzibur b'sheni le'avi. And you never have a case where roiv Klal Yisrael will actually bring the Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni is only for a meat of Klal Yisrael who were excluded from the roiv who brought it to Pesach Rishon. So in these occurrences, in fact, the Tamei Mesim will have no eitzah. Zok the Helig Gemara Vayter. A Pesach shenizrak damei. A carbon Pesach, its dam was already spritzed. The achlach noide shotam. And after its blood was spritzed, we found out that the meat became tamei. Rashi says a Pesach oyadam, the meat or the dam. Tosfos argues and says it's only the dam. Because the shaila is if the tzitz is maratza, or the Mishnah that tzitz maratza, and Tosfos says that the tzitz is not maratza on the achila. But Rashi says it's the basar or the dam. The tzitz will be maratza and it'll be a kosher carbon, and therefore you don't bring Pesach Sheni. Rashi says a tzitz maratza upatim in Pesach Sheni. However,
the behemoth was brought to Tahara and it only became
tamei
afterwards.
exactly it became tamei.
The meat or the meat, meaning it was already shechted, the meat or the dam
Became tamei right before the zrika, but you only found out about it after the zrika. So then the tzitz is maratza. What about nitmakov? What if a person found out after the zrika that he himself had become tamei before the zrika? Ain't that tzitz maratza? There, the tzitz is not maratza. And Rashi says the chayiv lasa is Pesach Sheni. There, he would be able to make a Pesach Sheni. Rashi said b'shat zrika lav bar me'evet Pesach. At the time of the zrika, he was not someone who could bring a carbon Pesach, because the Torah says about a person like that he's supposed to bring it by Pesach Sheni. Amru hanazir va'isa Pesach. A nazir who also at the end of his naziris, if someone dies and he becomes a tamei meis, let's see Rashi. It says vayam if he became a tamei meis before he finished his naziris, he loses his entire count. If a nazir became a tamei meis before he brought his karbonis, it's soiser his naziris. So a nazir and an oisa pesach hatzitz miratza al tumas adam. The tzitz will be maratza if the carbon became tamei, if the dam became tamei, but the ena tzitz maratza al tumas aguf. But the tzitz is not going to be maratza on tumas aguf. And Rashi tells us by the nazir, what is it relevant if it's maratza al tumas adam? V'taglachasa ksheira. Therefore, the haircut that the nazir takes at the end of his naziris is a good taglachas. In fact, it terminates properly his term of naziris, because the fact that its carbon became tamei will not affect the process. The process is still valid, and his naziris is concluded. But if he himself became tamei, if they were middle of bringing his karbonis, they didn't make his riki yet, and he himself became tamei, then he has to start from square one. Now, what about nitma tumas hatahoim? What if it was a tumas hatahoim? And Rashi tells us that's speaking about a suffix tumah that the Gemara is going to elaborate on. Then the tzitz maratza. Why is a suffix tumah? It means a suffix tumah. We found that he was exposed to something that makes him suffix tumah. Correct. And Rashi tells us the reason for this is, why is there this difference? The halacha l'Moshe Messinahi, the hutra tumas hatahoim lahem. There's a halacha l'Moshe Messinahi that the tzitz will be maratz on tumas hatahoim. Kedama b'gemara with the septim and faras lachi. And Rashi brings down two cases. We'll run it through because it's simple. Amru loy kever haya imcha bebayis nechnastaboy. You went into a home and it's possible that there's a kever there. There's a kever there somewhere. It's possible that you were right above it. Oy takas even sheishavtala. Or you sat on the stone and we know there's a kever somewhere there. If he found out that he had this suffix before he made his Pesach, then tzarech lasses Pesach Sheni. Amisha also, if he already made the Pesach, and they told him that before you made it, you had run into this situation, then ain't tzarech lasses Pesach Sheni. Then you wouldn't have to. A nazir that was going to bring his karbanos. There was a mace there, and it's a suffix if he became tamei. The noidoloi bein ad shaloi hevi karbanos bein mishevi karbanos. It doesn't make a difference when he found out. If he found it before the Kabbalah or after the Kabbalah, Tzarech Lavi carbon tuma. He has to bring a carbon tuma. Avol Amar Lo Al Kever at the Hain. So this is if they told him Ivade became Tamei. If Ivade became Tamei, then the tzitz is not Marata. Avol Amar Lo Kever at the Hain Imcha Bevai Shenachnas Taboy, which means there's only a Safek Tuma. Oy Tachas Evan Shishavtalah. If he found that before he brought his carbonates, Tzarech Lavi carbon tuma, it is Soishers Beziris. However, if after he brought his carbonates, they told him that beforehand he had run into a Safek Tuma, the tzitz will be Maratza for that. It's Allah Much Mashinai, Rashi tells us. Dr. Gemara.
This tip that you keep repeating that's Maratza, this is the tip of the Kohen.
Correct.
Did you elaborate previously what kind of class, why it was
The Gemara had a shaila. We had a shaila. Machlokes Noim is a tzitz Maratza wherever it is, whether it's worn or not, or only while it's on the forehead of the Kohen Gadol. So there was a machlokes Noim that those who hold the mere existence of the tzitz is Maratza on top.
But more than that, we don't know why the church.
We learned that out of Pesachim. We learned that out of Pesachim. Zok the Gemara. Taima the nizrak ba'achach noida. The only reason why we say that it's going to be good is because first this rika was done, and only then you found out that you became tummy, that the meat became tummy. I'm sorry. Aval noida ba'achach nizrak. But what if you found out that the meat was tummy or the dam was tummy, and you spritzed it anyway? Then loy maratza, then the tzitz would not be maratza. Now this is a diak that we're making from our Mishnah. The Gemara is going to end up abandoning this diak. But at this point, the Gemara holds that from the fact that the Mishnah says dafkan nizrak and then noida, it means that the tzitz will only be maratza if I found out about the fact that it was tamei only after I made this rika. We're meaning, I'm going to prove to you that the tzitz will be maratza even if you made this rika while you already knew that the dam was tamei. Because the Brisa says as follows: Alma tzitz maratza ala dam ve'ala basar ve'ala chelev shenitma bein b'shogig bein b'mezid. So what does shogig and mezid mean? Say if I spritzed the dam b'shogig not knowing it was tamei, and say if I spritzed the dam b'mezid knowing it was tamei. So you clearly see from this Brisa that even if it was noida and then it was nizrak, it would still be a kosher carbon. Bein noida ben beratin, bein b'yachal, bein b'tibur. So Amar Avina. No, B'shagi b'mezid is not referring to this rika that you made. B'shagi b'mezid is referring to the way in which this dam became tamei. Tum also bein b'shagi bein b'mezid hortza. Even if the dam became tamei b'mezid, something was bedafkim tameit, but you made it rika b'shagi because you didn't know about it. It was nizrak b'achach noida. Then the tzitz is maratz. But tum also bein b'shagi bein b'mezid, but hortza. But it's because and that would stem very nicely with our Mishnah, because once again it has to be nizrak v'achach noida, because if you knew about it, if you knew that it was tamei before you made this rika, that would be amazing, and that in fact would not, the tzitz would not be maratz on that. That's very good according to Ravina's approach. But Reb Shila had a different approach. Reb Shila said zrikasai bein b'shagi bein b'mezid hortza. Reb Shila learns that even if you knowingly spritzed dam, and you knew it was tamei, the tzitz will still be maratza. However, tum asoi b'shogig horta, the mezid like horta. What we focus on is how it became tamei. If it became tamei b'mezid, if someone was purposely metamed, then the tzitz is not maratza. But if it became tamei by mistake, I shared touched it, not on purpose, then we'll say the tzitz is maratza, even if you knowingly spritzed dam that became tamei in this fashion. So, how is Reb Shila going to work with our Mishnah? How is Reb Shila going to learn that? Nitma b'shogig v'zarkai. If it was nitma b'shogig and you spritzed it, bein b'shogig bein b'mezid hortza. What about our Mishnah? And we made a deal. Which means you spritzed it b'shogig. You didn't know that it was tamei. But if you spritzed it while you knew that it was tamei, so that would be mezid loy. According to our Mishnah, it wouldn't be good. According to Rab Shila, it will be good. Tomorrow, no. Hu adin da filu noida the achach nizrak. Even though our Mishnah says nizrak v'achach noida, our Mishnah agrees that even if you knew about the Tomah before you made this rika, it will still be in this ratza by the tzitz. So why did the Mishnah chapan v'haydek atoni nizrak v'achach noida? Why did it chapan that case? Only mishum the boile misni seifa. It's only because it wanted to contrast it with the halacha the seifa. Where the Sefer says nitma guf, if the person himself became tamei, then eina tzitz maratza, the tzitz will not be maratza. And there it's afilu nizruk ba'achach noida. Even if you didn't find out about your tumas aguf until after the zrika, it still will not be maratza. Afilu nizruk ba'achach noida loy, it would not be the tzitz would not be maratza. Kama so katani reisha nami nizruk ba'achach noida. That's what the reisha chap negates of nizruk ba'achach noida. But avada, if it was noida ba'achach nizrak, it would still the tzitz would still be maratza according to Rav Shira. Nitma tumas atayim. We've discussed if the meat became tamei, if the dam became tamei, if the owner of the carbon became tamei. But what would happen if kohen hamaratzav the carbon is saying? This halacha l'Moshe Sinai that tells us that if the person came in contact with a savak tuma, the tzitz maratza, would it also be maratza if the kohen that processed the carbon became tamei with a tumas atayim? Mi'amrin, do you say? This halacha l'Moshe that we had regarding tumas hatayim is bebailim. That's only if the bailim became tamei. But the kohen like gemiri, idolma bezivcha gemiri. It's a heter that's referring to the carbon, not to the person. Loishna the kohen, loishna the bailim. Amar Tashma. Let's bring a right. The Tanya Abchia. Lo yarmu tumas hatayim ela lemeis bilvad. We only said tumas hatayim if it's a tumas meis involved. So meis l'mutimai. What type of tumah would you not be matir by a suffix tumah? Lav l'mut tumas hatayim the sheretz. If it's not a suffix tumah of mace, it's probably referring to a suffix tumah of sheretz. And it's saying that if you had a suffix tumah of sheretz, then it would be a problem. The tzitz would not be marat. Well, let's think about this. What's the problem? For my askinon, in the name of the bailim, if we're talking about the bailim, we found out that they had a suffix tumah sheretz, uvaman. What are we talking about? Even nazir, if it was a nazir, mima hanabei, a nazir who becomes tumah from a sheretz, that doesn't impact his naziris. The nazir is only a problem if it became a tumah mace. He almost alav amar achmana. A tumah sheretz will not impact the nazir. So it must be a Pesach. It must be someone who made a Pesach. But let's think about it. You have to understand, someone who became a tumah sheretz, he'll be able to eat the carbon Pesach tonight anyway, because he can toivel and he can eat tonight. The whole shaila is, do we allow him to participate in the carbon since right now he happens to be tummy? So if you hold ein sheretz and v'zarkin al tumah sheretz, then it'll make perfect sense. And you could say that if he had a suffix tumah sheretz, his carbon is going to be possible because the halacha l'Moshe Sinai only tells you that if it's a suffix tumas mace, the tzitz is maratza. But if you hold that you are shaychet v'zark al tumei sheretz, so then there's no problem at all here because hashta tumah you do a hotreloi. Even if we know b'vadoyis that this owner of this carbon was a tumah sheretz, we still would allow him to participate in the carbon Pesach. So tumas at time like culture game. So if it's a suffix tumas sheretz, surely it won't prevent him from participating in the carbon Pesach. So that can't be what this brisa, when Rav brought this exception and says that the heter of tumas at the time only applies to tumas mates and not to tumas sheretz. It can't be speaking to the bailam because tumas at the time by sheretz has zero impact on the bailam. Elav b'koyin. It must be talking about the koyin. That means that koyin was found to have had a suffix if he became tamei with a sheretz, and that's why Rav Chia said that the heter of tumas at the time only applies to tumas mace, but not to tumas sheretz. And the tumas sheretz is only relevant if the kohen himself became tamei, because that would taka ruin the carbon. So this answers our shaila that the tumas at the home that we have a heter for is not only for the bailim, it's also for the kohen, which means it's based on the zevach, like the Gemara said. It's bezavch gemiri. Amar Yosy law, you don't have a raya. Let's say it's referring to the bailim. Uba Pesach, and we're talking about Pesach. But when we say that the tumas at the home was only said like tumas mace, it's not to the exclusion of tumas sheretz, because like we said, tumas sheretz is not relevant. But it's tumas at the home the ziva. It's speaking if it's a suffix tumas at the home the ziva. What is the tumas at the ziva? Rashi learns every zav on his last day when he's counting, he's a suffix, because if he ends up not seeing today, he'll be tahar tonight. If he ends up seeing today, it's soiser all of this previous shivanikim, and he's going to be tamei. So therefore, every zav on the seventh day is considered a tumas at time because it's a suffix if he's tamei or not, and the pasuk is telling us, not the pasuk, the Brisa is telling us that this Suffolk Tumah, which we allow someone to be part of the Korban Pesach for, is only if it's a Suffolk Tumah Smeis. But if he's a Zava, if he's a Zov, and he's on this last day, we will not allow him to participate in the Korban Pesach. Tosfos learns it's actually a Suffolk, but we learn like Rashi that every Zav on the last day of his Shiva Nekiyim is considered a Suffolk Tumah, and the halach is that you would not be able to participate in a Korban Pesach if you're a Zav on the seventh day. I guess we could stop over here.
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach.